Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to have you here on board. Brian, we have had a wonderful day full of speakers, but I've been looking forward to this particular session because this is something unique that
Yes.
people don't really know about, but yet maybe know something. But
Right.
it's about bringing some new thinking into the whole mix as to how to navigate in today's world with facial decoding. So I'm
Yes.
going to do a quick introduction here, Brian, and
Mhm.
I'd invite you to tell a little bit more about yourself as well.
Sure.
So Brian, welcome. Brian specializes in decoding facial features to build rapport and enhance communication. Now, that's a very big statement here, and that applies to so many things. But I don't want to steal your thunder here, Brian. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your
Sure.
journey, and how you've come to do what you're doing, and then we'll delve into some of the
Delve
details.
into it. Sure. So I'm Brian Galke. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm kind of an introverted extrovert in that I love to be around people, but I was terrified to be around people at the exact same time. So growing up, I always picked jobs that people had to come to me. I was did retail, waited tables, bartender, bouncer, and then when I went into the corporate world, I picked a help desk. Why? Because then people still have to come to me. And like every good introvert, what do? I would revert to books to learn more about other people. So body language books were my favorite growing up, and then How to Win Friends and Influence People, you name it. But in 2010, my life changed. And that was because a friend came in from out of town. We were supposed to go to dinner. She canceled and she said, no, instead of going to dinner, you need to come meet this guy. And I said, why do I need to come meet this guy? She said, well, because he reads faces. I go, I'm not going for that. I've read all these books. This is going to be sham, a fraud, you name it. And she was very resilient. So I finally went to go meet the guy, but I went arms crossed. I was going to prove that this guy was a fraud. And he won me over because he had just the nicest personality. And his name is Mac Fulfer, and he was an attorney who learned it for jury consulting. And then he left law practice to teach it to other people. And I became one of his students. And I'd drive from Dallas to Fort Worth
Yeah.
twice a month, 45-minute drive each way to do group study sessions with him. And what I found was it was a skill that I could apply both proactively and reactively. So if I knew who I was going to meet with, I could go look them up on LinkedIn or social media. And then when I was walking in, I felt like I was visiting an old friend versus walking in cold as just a salesperson. So my skills got better with body language, with learning to read faces, is my career excelled as well. So I went from help desk to installer to corporate trainer to sales engineer, then sales, you name it. And when I left corporate America, I was regional vice president of sales with a $40 million book of business. Not bad for an introvert.
Amazing, amazing. Brian, that is such an amazing story. And you have these pivotal moments, right? These aha
Mhm.
moments. And I think that's where you had your pivotal moment here. And I'm keen to just delve a little bit more detail now into the actual facial decoding side of things in business.
Sure.
So share with us, how understanding facial cues can enhance individuals, but also in the
Sure.
business leaders. How can they use that to have conversations or to negotiate and build stronger relationships? Because it's all about that at this time, right?
100%. And the big thing is, as AI becomes more popular and jobs are replaced, it's going to be the soft skills that can't be replaced.
Mhm.
Because when you're in the room with someone, it changes things. In this day and age, I like to say these devices connect us to the world, but they disconnect us from each other. And it's true because sometimes it's easier to text or have a Zoom call than it is to go and meet face to face. So we lose a lot more of the personalizing of things when we go to have these meetings. But when you take the time we're raised with the golden rule, which is treat others the way you want to be treated. That's a good start, but you may not want to be treated the way I want to be treated. And so by learning to decode people's facial features, I figure out how do you take in information? How do you process information? Should I present the positives first or the negatives first? All these things are visible on someone's face. And so what you figure out is I know what I want to say. It doesn't matter if I'm a manager, a leader, if I'm a parent and I want to talk to my kids. I know what I want to say, but it's how do I best say it so it's understood by you? And a great analogy I like to give is I was a really bad traveler when I was a kid because I thought everywhere I go, they should speak English. And if they don't, I'll speak English louder. Well,
Mm,
as you can imagine, that doesn't work very well. But that's the way that most people talk to each other is I'm going to explain things the way I want to explain it and not taking you into the conversation. But when I started traveling and I learned basic phrases, please, thank you, good morning, good afternoon, where's the bathroom, then when I tried to speak someone else's language, they tried to speak mine at the exact same time.
mm,
And it changed things. So what I would do is I would take the study materials with me and I'd go on the road and I'd be doing these presentations and I wouldn't tell anyone what I was doing. And that's the whole reason the company's called Subtle Skills because I was still testing it. So it's a skill that's been around since the Greeks. Aristotle has been mentioned with it. It was taught to authors and artists for character development. So when you hinted at it a little bit earlier, but that is every book we ever read, there wasn't a picture for every character in the book. And so the
mm,
only two ways to describe characters in a book were through their actions and through their facial features.
mm,
So we're all amateur face readers to a degree. We just haven't really formally been taught it. Now, here's the crazy part.
mm,
It's based on something called physiognomy. Now, as soon as somebody Googles it, they read the first sentence of Wikipedia, it says it's a pseudoscience. And that's true because a pseudoscience is anything that somebody said was a science that doesn't meet the five metrics of the scientific method. And it's not a science, it's an art. It's no different than body language, statement analysis. None of those skills are 100%. However, after 14 years of doing this and testing it all around the world, I found it's in the high 90s.
mm,
And so when you start looking and focusing on other people, like I teach eyebrows first. And the reason for that is eyebrows lead to eye contact. And that's such a lost art this day and age
mm,
that if you're focused on somebody's eyebrows of how high or low are they or what shape are they, I'm giving you my time and attention and I'm making eye contact with you.
right.
That is the first start to building rapport
Mm,
because we're so distracted by the scroll and everything else today that our attention span has shrunk more and more over time. So with smartwatches, I got a smartwatch as a gift. I turned off pretty much every notification as soon as I got it because I know my personality is I would be distracted as soon as it went off.
mm, yeah.
But when I'm learning to focus on you, I'm not thinking about me. And that's where the introverted part comes in is when I would go out in public, I mentioned I like to be around people, but I was terrified of being around people at the same time because I was living in my head. What
Mm,
should I say? What do they think of me? Is my voice going to crack? You name it. But when
mm,
I'm focused on you, I'm not thinking about me. I'm thinking about we and us. And
mm,
that's where my life really started to change because when I became a corporate trainer, I had to start thinking, well, I can learn the material, but I need to learn material to teach it to others. Well, I applied that same thing to decoding faces. Is I started teaching it to servers and things so they can make more money on tips.
mm,
And as I kept getting introduced to more and more people, I stopped getting it in my own way because I made it not about my product or why we're the best, but what were their needs? And then how do I speak their language when I was talking to them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Brian, I wanted to delve a little bit more deeper into this now, coming to the real practical aspects here.
Hmm.
And you touched on this one previously. When we come to individuals
Hmm.
and using facial, decoding facial features, um, I want to hear some practical strategies on how, and you've described it, but share with us again. And then the second
Sure.
strand is within businesses,
Hmm.
all within the umbrella of effective communication. What kind of strategies would you put in place using these facial decoding elements to enhance effective communication?
Sure.
Um, Share with us, and I'll do a few follow on because this is
Sure.
really interesting to me.
So we'll start with eyebrow height. So, and we talk about faces all the time. We just don't realize that we do. And sorry, I got distracted earlier. So it used to be part of the education system until Henry VIII had it yanked out because he said, I don't like the idea that villains and vagabonds could use this against their fellow man. So this used to be taught in schools. I forgot that part earlier, so I want to come back and cover that. Back to your talk about in business, how can it be used? Well, eyebrow height tells us how fast does somebody make a decision. Now, it's not about are they smart or are they dumb? Or are they slow? No, some people want more information. So eyebrows, if you think of eyebrows like speed bumps on someone's forehead and the data is trying to race to get to your eye, well, the
Yeah.
higher the eyebrow is, the more time because I can only go so fast, go over the speed bump and try and speed up again. So with higher eyebrows, those are people who want more information and need more time to make a decision.
Mm,
If the eyebrow is right above the eye, just right here sitting on top of the eye, Data can race down that forehead. So those are quick decision makers.
Mm.
Again, it's not a sign of intelligence. Some people are more impulsive, some people need more time.
Yeah.
So it's not an intelligence factor, it's just a decision making factor. So
Mm.
if I know I'm going to be talking to someone and they have a very high eyebrow, I know, let's say I have 30 minutes on their calendar, it's probably going to take the 30 minutes before they make a decision.
Mm.
Salespeople love a one call close, or leaders sometimes want somebody to just take the information and run with it. Well, based on the height of the eyebrow, you know they may need a little more time or they're going to make a decision fast. So that's how you can adapt. So if they have a high eyebrow, I know I'm going to be in there the full 30 minutes. If they have a very low eyebrow and I've got 30 minutes on their calendar and I don't get to the point in 5 minutes and let them ask questions, I'm going to start losing that individual over time. So
Yeah.
it's learning to just adjust your pitch and your pace to the person that you're talking to.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's a very simple example. And like I said, we talk about faces all the time. So we talk about highbrow humor and lowbrow humor.
Mm.
Highbrow humor is when somebody tells you a joke and you have to think about it and then you laugh. Lowbrow humor is physical comedy, Three Stooges, Charlie Chaplin, you name it. We see that physical comedy and we laugh immediately. Well, that's the same thing as the decision making. Highbrow humor, I have to think about the joke, then I laugh. Lowbrow humor, instantly funny. So we talk about faces all the time. So if I see someone and their eyebrows very low, I know if I have a long story, I need to shorten it up.
Yeah.
Or if I'm going in with a 30 page PowerPoint, I need to think, what are my 3 to 5 most important slides? And I'll literally skip past the other ones and let them see that and go, these are the main points that we have to get to. Or if you know who you're going to meet with ahead of time and you go look them up on LinkedIn or social media, then I do the presentation in advance. But I used to sell technology to a place that had blind evaluation committees. And so when we walked in, that was the first thing I looked for is who had the high eyebrow and who had the low eyebrow. The
Yeah.
person with the high eyebrow is who I'd start talking to first and making eye contact with because they're going to need more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'd look around at the other people in the room. That's a very, very simple example. Before I give another one, do you want to ask questions?
No, no, go for it.
Okay. So in addition to eyebrow height, high or low, there's three basic shapes of eyebrows. So there's straight eyebrows,
Mhm.
angled eyebrows, and rounded eyebrows. If someone has straight eyebrows, get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data. Now, if you think of television or movies, who had straight eyebrows? Spock. What was
Mm.
Spock all about? Logic, data. That's it.
Yeah.
So, television and movies, because they're based on authors and artists and the books we read and everything else, they mimic the same thing that was taught before. So, in a lot of science fiction movies, we know who the villain is because they'll have angled eyebrows and a pointed nose and a pointed chin. So, they've been studying the exact same studies since the Greeks. And that's why when we turn on a movie, we know, or a television show, who's a hero and who's a villain. So Spock is a perfect example because straight eyebrow, he only cares about logic. So if you
Yeah.
think, oh, they've got a straight eyebrow, get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data. If they have an angled eyebrow, like I have, it's what's my angle? Help me understand it first, so then I can help my friends, my family, my coworkers, depending on what it is that I'm purchasing. However, if it's rounded eyebrows, they think about the people around them first and then themselves second. So you don't make it about me. You make it about how everyone else benefits. And then after everyone else benefits, then I'll benefit in the long run.
Mm.
So I can have the same product, but I would explain it three different ways based on what shape their eyebrow is.
Mm.
And so using this as an example in hotels, when I travel, if I walk in and they have a straight eyebrow, I'd say, I'd like an upgrade, please. If they have an angled eyebrow, are you the person who can help me, a diamond member, get an upgrade?
Yeah.
If they have a rounded eyebrow, oh, I had such a long flight or just such a long drive. It would just be amazing if I had a room I could stretch out in, kind of walk around. Is an upgrade available? So I'm asking for the same thing three different ways based on who's standing at the counter.
Mm.
So I'm still asking for what I want, but I'm making it about the person I'm talking to instead of making it about me. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And it's amazing that you say these things because I'm thinking in my business or with people that I'm interacting in the business or even in my personal life.
Mhm.
If you know these strategies on how to communicate based on facial cues, you're able to, as you were describing when you go to a hotel, you're able to actually interact with them much more better and then eventually make good decisions, but
Yes.
also help you. move forward with whatever you're trying to propose or to hear and challenge
Hmm.
back. This is something new. I mean, I'm not that I haven't heard it, but working through this in a personal and business context,
Hmm.
I find is really beneficial. I mean, like, how are you finding it with businesses that are you're bringing these strategies to? How do they find that? How do they experience that?
They love it. So let me give you the most extreme example. I speak at Door to Door Con every year, and that's the largest conference for people who knock on doors to sell things. So
Yeah,
imagine when somebody opens the door, they have seconds to figure out how do I talk to the person before they either slam the door shut on them or pull a gun on them. So that does happen in the US from time to time. So it's immediately knowing, okay, I can have these three presentations available. As soon as somebody answers the door, I know which one to pull from. So it instills confidence in the person who's knocking on the doors because they feel like they have a choice and they have a capability that they have. So I say it's a skill, it's not the skill. I think everyone should read body language books and do other things, but this was the first proactive skill where if I knew who I was going to meet with or I teach clients, well, let's go get a picture of the person you're going to do the pitch for. So a good example of this is I had a client reach out and said, "Hey, I have a big deal with this doctor and I don't want to blow it." I said, "Okay." So let's hop on a call. We hopped on a Zoom. We researched a few pictures of the doctor.
yeah,
I said, okay, you need to speak this way on this because their eyebrows are straight. You need to, how long is your presentation? Oh, it's this long. Nope, their eyebrows are very low. Let's trim it down. And they had a few other facial features. I got a call back an hour later and he said, I won the client and they never even asked me the price. And it's because we've made it about the person, not about his product. And that's where you can learn to adapt things. So, what industries? I've taught to law enforcement, I've taught to education, so principals, superintendents, you name it, door knockers. Here's a fun one. I have looking for love in all the wrong faces.com, which is a dating one because why people went to online dating where they see pictures of people and it's not about right or wrong features. It's what do we have in common and what's different.
yeah,
And that's really what life is about. And is we went into this period where we kind of had to make it about us because it's in such a noisy society right now that we have to stand out amongst the crowd. But we forgot that sometimes the best way to stand out is to invest in other people more than we invest in ourselves. And that's what it's really about is by studying anything like this, where it's learning about the person you're talking to, it's not a narcissistic trait. I'm wanting to learn how to interact better with other people, then I'm just going to be the best version of me. Now, we should all strive for that, but we need to be the best person we can be to help others at the same time.
yeah, yeah. Brian, this is amazing. I have a question related to cultural differences. I mean,
Sure,
people operate differently with um, how they what their facial features are as they speak to other people as well. Do you
sure,
find that different, or how do you address facial decoding when it comes to different types of cultures and how
sure.
people operate?
That's the best part. It doesn't matter male, female, left-handed, right-handed, where in the world they're born. Everything is about having left brain and right brain features. And so all you're looking at is it's the actual individual. So I'm not comparing you to anyone else but you. And I'm only looking at those facial features and saying, in proportion to the size of your face, are your eyes large or small? Are your ears large or small? Is your upper lip large or small? Is your chin large or small? But it's only for you. And in every type of culture, everywhere around the world, everybody has those features large and small. And if you're ever concerned of thinking, could this ever be misunderstood? Then it's called a non read. You just skip it and you move on to something else. So there is no one feature on the face that I pay attention to. I pay
Yeah.
attention to several things. Eyebrows high or low? What shape are their eyebrows? Do they have a fuller upper eyelid or not? Do they have an angled up eye or an angled down eye? All
Mhm.
these things just tell me a little bit about you, but it's like learning to cook. When people first learn this, they want to learn everything at once. Well, when you're learning to cook, you try one ingredient. And when you know what that ingredient tastes like, then you add another. Then you add another. It's the same thing with learning faces, is it builds upon itself over time. Or for example, reading. First, we learn letters, then we learn words, then we learn sentences, then we learn paragraphs. It's the exact same thing, but you can do it with people. So if you start with nothing other than what we talked about today, let me tell you the best way the audience can do it. Next time you go anywhere that there's a server, you just look at the server and you think, are their eyebrows high or low? And what
Mhm.
shape are they? That'll give that server your time and attention for a moment. that'll make that server feel seen and heard. And we live in a day and age where that is a rarity instead of the norm. So when they feel seen and heard, there's a ripple effect. You get better service, but every other table they take care of gets better service too. So you can do this if you go to the coffee shop. I do this all the time. Um, in my presentations, I'll talk about, hey, here's how to get free food and drinks. If I'm going somewhere and I know I'm going to be back, then I teach it to staff while I'm there. Because if they're waiting on people, they should know how long should they give them with the menu? Should they be back to the table very fast? They can make these adjustments. And so I'm helping them make better money. And whenever I'm I'm doing this in decoding faces, people go, "Can I get you a food or drink?" I'm like, "Yes, you can." So it the
Yeah.
worst thing that happens is you make someone else feel seen and heard, then you left them in a better place than you found them that day. And
Yeah.
that's the ultimate win. If you get a perk out of it, it's a bonus, but it's not a requirement.
Yeah, yeah, no, great. And Brian, t tell me about any ethical considerations that, if there are any, that come with, I would think this is a pretty powerful technique of
Sure.
facial decoding. What are some of the ethical
There's
considerations
not
one to
I
look at?
used to have a hang up of thinking I never wanted to teach this to HR because I was afraid they wouldn't hire. I didn't never want to stop someone from getting a job. But then when I realized is, but
Yeah.
what if you're not helping either person if they get hired for the wrong job? And the big misunderstanding is none of this is judgment. It's all about learning to understand other people. And so, like I said, it's like traveling to another country. You learn the basic phrases to understand the person. You don't walk over there and go, oh, they're not like me, so they're bad people. So I haven't really run across anything that's unethical about it because it doesn't help you do anything except for build rapport with someone else. Now, anything can be misused. You know, a knife can cut my steak or it can stab someone. So it's more about the person who's doing it. But if you go in with the open heart of, I just want to learn to build rapport with other people and understand them, it's no different than anything else we do. If I was walking up and let's say that you had on your favorite sports team's logo and I
Mhm.
talked to you about it, that's not manipulation. That's finding something we have in common that we want to talk about. And that's all this is as well.
Yeah, amazing. Brian, tell us you've mentioned a number of strategies here.
Mhm.
And we're coming to a close very shortly here, but tell us a little bit uh, about some practical strategies that the audience can leverage. I know you did, but
Yeah,
summarize that for us, please, and then
sure.
we'll go into a challenge session.
Yeah, I'll give a very simple one, and that anybody who's ever typing an email, putting marketing material together to it, or giving a speech can use. And that is you need to use three types of language when you're talking to some. You want to use visual language, auditory language, and kinesthetic, which is hands-on language. So in all of your marketing material, you want to use visual words like if you can see where I'm coming from, picture this. You
Mm,
also want to include auditory, which is does this sound like a good idea? Do you hear where I'm coming from? And then you want to put some type of action or movement word into your wording as well. And the reason for that is there's three ways that people learn. They learn through what they see, what they hear, and hands-on. So if
mm,
all of your marketing material or your emails or your speeches hit all three of those topics, you're speaking everyone's language and you're not isolating someone.
yeah,
So for
yeah.
example, whenever I hang up the phone, I will literally say, okay, I'll see you later. I was having an auditory conversation, but I'm extremely visual. If I wrote all of my correspondence to only be visual, I'd be alienating two-thirds of the people.
Mm,
But when we used to do RFPs or requests for proposals, that'd be hundreds of pages. Some of what I would change after the RFP writers were in there was making sure we had words of all types
mm,
within there. So
mm,
that way you're speaking everyone's language because you may be putting together an email proposal for the person that you see. However, it may be forwarded on to someone else for approval and you
exactly.
don't know who that person is. So that's why you want to add all three of them. So if you're doing a presentation like we talked about before, and let's say it's for somebody with straight eyebrows, I would still have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic wording in there because if they forward it to finance or to a CEO for approval and it wasn't written for that person, they're not going to read it because you tailored it for the person you were sending it to, but it
Mm,
may get passed on.
mm. Amazing. I'm really intrigued by this because I'm thinking about myself here and I'm thinking
Hmm.
about my own personal relationships, how
Yes.
I can leverage this, with my own family, with my wife, and my wife with
Yes.
me as well. Because this is really important and how we actually communicate, right? We talked about effective communication strategy, but at the same time, I'm also thinking about businesses. And then when you bring all of this together, it's all about then making those decisions the right way and uh, I'm going to use a broader term of resilience here, but they're all strands of resilience as well. So how
Yes,
you can become a lot more stronger in the way you actually operate as an individual, but also as a business, as a collective, right? Uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
I
Uh,
well, the way I end all my like keynotes is I'll leave the last 15 minutes for volunteers. And why? Because you can hear anything in theory, but I want people to come up and see how fast we can discern who
yeah.
someone is based on their face. And again, it's not about judgment, it's about learning to understand them. So if I can give one last example, if somebody has a little horizontal line right here, so below the lip and above the chin, that's somebody who thrives on verbal affirmation.
All
So it
right.
doesn't matter, is it in your romantic life or is it your professional life?
Yeah.
So let's say professional, and you see that on someone, sincere verbal compliments or praise
Mm.
goes a long way because not everybody's about title or pay. Some
Yeah.
people just want to hear thank you for a job well done. Now, don't get me wrong, you should still give people money when they deserve it. But if
Mm.
you see that little line, if you've ever read The Five Love Languages, the book,
Yeah.
words of affirmation is one of the five love languages. And there's a visible marker on people's face right here that when you see it, you can think they prefer words of affirmation. And that's how I can make them feel validated is by picking their love language.
Yeah. Ryan, you know what? I'm actually going to get in touch with you to learn a little bit more on how I can be better at this,
Sure.
and hopefully I can help other people as well, especially the
Mhm.
people who are closer in my life as well. But
Right.
this is really enlightening, and I was always curious about how this way you've really enlightened us. One last thing from your side, how do you have a challenge back to the audience as to what they can do
Mhm. I
today?
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
I, I hinted at it earlier, and that is start paying more attention to the people who are taking care of you. And it doesn't matter what service that they're providing, make eye contact with a janitor. When you're ordering your Starbucks or going to get coffee, don't be down on your phone the entire time. Look and stop and actually look at them in the eye. Now, don't go creepy at it, just staring at them, but pay attention to who they are as a person and make them feel seen and heard. Because doing something like that, it may change their life, it may save their life. There's a lot of people who don't feel seen and heard and think the world may be a better place without them. You taking the time just to make eye contact and let them feel seen can literally save their life. So
Yeah.
it's something we can do. It doesn't cost us any money. It costs us a few seconds of our time, and it's way more important than a phone in our hand is.
Yeah, and Brian, it's about being intentional, right? Like as you
Mhm.
said, just being intentional and giving them that time. No,
Yes.
wonderful. I really appreciate you for sharing those great insights with us. And oh, I'm definitely going to be in touch with you. Um, one last thing, how can the audience engage with you?
Sure. Everything is subtle skills. Instagram, you name it, TikTok, YouTube. But I learned people can't spell subtle. So if you can't spell subtle, you can go to getthecheatsheet.com.
That's great.
People can't spell it. I've tried. I tried
Yeah,
buying misspellings of it, and I was still
yeah.
missing a lot of people. So I
Subtle,
thought, get the
subtle.
cheat sheet is easy.
Cheat sheet, yes, absolutely. Okay, wonderful. And for the audience, we'll definitely bring this up in our post-recording sessions, and we'll promote
Perfect.
Brian Galke's site and so forth. But Brian, thank you so much. This was this is really amazing. I've definitely learned a lot here, and believe me, I'm definitely going to get in touch with you because I there's some things that I need to improve on from my side.
I,
I know
I'm
that.
happy to be here for you. Reach out when you're ready.
Okay, Brian, thank you so much.
Yeah,
You
thank you for
take.
having me.
All right. So. Okay, wonderful. That's Brian Galke was talking about facial decoding, and we are now going to go into our next speaker who was with us earlier, Melinda, and I'm going to invite Melinda very shortly. Before I'm just going to stop recording so we maintain the same segments here or different.